Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for our special education town hall meeting this evening. Your participation shows us that you are really interested in your children's education and finding out some information so that we can move forward with our plan to make sure that folks are getting what they need to be successful in our special education courses and our return to school. Justin, can you advance our slide for us, please? Thank you. Let's take a look at tonight's format and kind of run through that so that you know what's coming. We are going to have a little bit of a welcome, and then we're going to list our special education priorities for you so you know what we're coming from in terms of how we're looking at things for planning for our special education youngsters in Wayne Westland Community Schools. I'm going to give you a brief outline of those special education services while we're in distance learning. This may answer some of your questions even before we get to the question and answer portion of tonight's meeting. I want to give you some specific supervisor contact information in case you have questions that are just about your child. It's going to be important that you know who to reach out to and who will help you should you have additional questions beyond tonight's meeting, or if they are very specific and just for your child. Then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of tonight. And I hope that's a dinner time thing, meat and potatoes of questions and answer sessions. And we'll probably have about 30 minutes or so to be able to answer those questions for you. As Jenny said, we're going to be, depending on that chat feature, that's where you're going to be putting some of your questions. I'm going to have my supervisors in there as well. They may be answering some of your questions and typing right in the chat room itself. We might be doing other ones that we're seeing frequently in our question and answer session. In the end, though, we're going to make sure all of your questions have answers, even if we don't get to them tonight. Then we'll make some closing remarks, and we'll come to a close and spend a little bit of time with this beautiful evening that we have for our Michigan summer here. All right, Justin, if you'd be so kind as to give us the next slide, please. I am Charlie Hallman, and I am your Director of Special Education here in Wayne Westland. You've got my contact information there on your screen, my email and my phone number. I am your point of contact when all else fails and you need to get a hold of somebody to make sure that we have in place what you need to help your child be successful. Please use this information. We want you to reach out to us. I promise that I will make contact with you, or I'll put you in contact with the person that you need to be able to help you to solve problems, work together, and just get the things that we need to get to you so that your child is successful and we continue to move forward with everybody having what they need. Let's advance that slide again there, Justin. And let's talk about the special education priorities. This is a key point that I want to make to you folks, because you need to know that when we're looking at things for special education, when we're looking at your youngsters, these are the three things that we make sure that we have in the front of our minds. Number one, safety. We want to make sure that everybody is safe here. Your students are extremely important to us, and know that when we start to take a look at making plans and moving forward, the first thing we think about is it safe? What risks do we have? How can we make sure that your children are 100% safe as we move through what we have to do to be able to get to education for everybody? The second thing after safety is educational benefit, and this is critical, that the things that we're presenting to your children have benefit, that they're going to learn, that they're going to grow, that their goals and objectives are being addressed, met, and if need be, reworked and continued to be addressed and met, so that we can have successful children that are working hard to learn everything that they possibly can. The third thing in terms of those priorities, that we're compliant with all laws, policies, and regulations. You know, there are many rules in terms of special education that are laid out for us. These things are very important, and we know that all of the things that we do have to be compliant with things like IDEA, with the special education rules for the state of Michigan, with the policies and procedures that we set out here in Wayne-Westland, and know that these are things that we always keep in consideration when we're considering what we'll do for students within the school district. And I just want to reiterate, we start with safety, then we make sure that the students can benefit from this educationally, and we always want to work within those laws and procedures that we have set forth for us. Justin, give us another slide, please, if you would. So let's talk a little bit about the outline of special education services during our distance learning portion of our new normal. Students' individual education plans are still fully in place. What you need to know is those plans that were in place last year, maybe before March, maybe after March, those IEPs, those educational plans are still fully in effect. All of those special education services, whether it's teacher consultant services or resource room services, maybe physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, orientation and mobility, the list goes on and on. But know that all of those services that are part of your child's IEP remain in place and are just done now through a distance learning instead of in a face-to-face or an in-person kind of setting. Furthermore, the frequency and duration of those services does not change in distance learning. If you're used to seeing your child in a resource room program for 7 to 9 hours a week, in a face-to-face or an in-person learning situation, you're going to see that same level of service when we have distance learning in place. Really, the change here is how children access our services. This is where we look a little bit different, and this is where we have things like Google Meets, Zoom meetings like we're doing right now, Seesaw, Raz Kids, all of these different methods of communication that we'll do with children that's part of our new normal. So know that those plans are still in place. The hours that were in place are still fully in effect. All of those services that you would expect are still all there. The modifications and accommodations. So if you're used to seeing your student have reduced number of problems, that's still part of distance learning. If you're used to seeing an accommodation like extended time for learning, that's still an accommodation that happens during distance learning. The main point here is just it looks a little bit different in our new normal, just as this looks a little bit different than what we would normally have in place. Justin, another slide for us, please. Data collection, and let's talk about this baseline and then a contingency learning plan. Special education providers are going to be collecting progress data on each student's IEP goals. They've already collected 2 of these, and we're looking forward to them collecting a 3rd one around the 21st of September. These data points are going to drive how students are doing towards their goals and objectives in terms of special education. We're going to be looking at where they were before all of this got started on March 13th. So there's a progress note out there that deals with that data point. We also want to take a look at between March and June, how the children progressed in terms of their learning from those 2 points. And then from there, addressing what some people call the summer slide, or I've even heard it called the COVID slide. What do things look like after we've been in school for a couple weeks on September 21st? These 3 data points that all special education providers will be collecting, placing into a student's instructional log, will give us data to be able to produce a contingency learning plan. And you know, in special education, we certainly couldn't go without shortening that up to letters. So we're talking about sometimes seeing this as a CLP, but that's a contingency learning plan. And what a contingency learning plan is it adds to an IEP and gives that IEP a more robust way of addressing the goals that are part of each student's IEP. So those contingency learning plans address these things. They address goal areas of concern based on the data. Remember those 3 data points. If we're seeing that students aren't making progress or not making the progress that we assumed they would, or even in some cases, we may look at students that have made tremendous progress and need new goals since they were last in because of the amount of effort that moms and dads have done working with students while we were in this different way of learning. Goals may need to be adjusted because of what's happened since March and since June in terms of raising them for some students, adjusting them for others, or taking a look at the way that we're delivering services to be able to meet those goals and objectives. This will be reflected in a contingency learning plan. Remember, we had contingency learning plans at the end of last year. We'll have new contingency learning plans this year, and they're going to be based on these data points. We've got to have plans, and we've always looked at regression and recruitment of goals. This year it's going to be even more critical because of the amount of time we've been out of school and the amount of time it's been since we've done some of the services in a face-to-face manner. We need to take a look at any goal that we've got to see where students aren't making progress, and we've got to make some changes. This is also where we're going to look at individual student needs that might require instruction beyond distance learning. So this is going to be an individual, each child unique situation where there may be students that when we take a look at those data points, when we start to come together and have that contingency learning plan, that some students maybe need to come into school in a small group or even individual to receive a service so that we can address areas of goals and objectives that aren't progressing as we thought, and that they're going to require more of a face-to-face or an in-person learning kind of a situation. But again, that's going to be unique. It's going to be based on data, and it's going to be something that we progress and do with each person, each student, as we gather that data and work through that. Let's continue, please. Thank you, Justin. So I wanted to give an opportunity here to get out some information in terms of the awesome special education supervisors you have at your disposal if you've got individual questions that are specific to your child. Let me go through those for you. Deb Parkinson is the first of our special education supervisors. You'll see her contact information on the screen. She's a supervisor for elementary and middle schools. So if you've got specific questions, she's one person that you could reach out to. Heather Martinez-Verrier is also a special education supervisor. She does work with elementary and middle school students as well. She's another contact person. You can see her information. We've got an email and a phone number for her there as well. Justin, if you could advance us to the next slide. Here we go for middle and high school students, and that's not a mistake. Each one of our supervisors does supervise a middle school, so any one of them can handle those middle school questions. We'll make sure that we get you to the proper person. There's Mona Melad's information there as well. She's got her email. There's a phone number. If you've got specific questions as to your high school or middle school students, she'd be an excellent person to reach out to as well. And last, certainly but not least, we have Mui Cornish, who is our preschool director over at Stottlemyre. If you've got individual questions about the preschool programs that are happening there, remember there are about 5 different programs that do happen at Stottlemyre. Mui is your guy to reach out to. There's his email address and his phone number so that you can get a hold of him if you've got specific questions about what's happening. You know, case managers are always the best first point of contact, but remember some of those people are still enjoying some vacation time with their families and such. So if you are emailing them, please remember, give them a little grace and patience as they wind down their summer before they're coming back. But know that our supervisors are all back and ready to answer questions. So if you need some things before you get frustrated, just reach out to them. they'll be more than happy to help with anything that they can do if you've got some of those specific questions, concerns, or just need to chat with someone further beyond what we're doing today. All right, what we got next there, Justin? It's time for the meat and potatoes. It's the question and answer time. And so I've got Heather here with me, and we're going to be going through some of those questions that are frequently coming up. I do want to let you know that give us a little grace and patience too as we get used to our new normal in Zoom. Some of those questions that are in the chat room start to cycle, and before we got to them, one might slip past us. Please don't be insulted. We're not dismissing you or anything like that. It might be something where we need you to copy and paste and put that question in there for us again as we get used to our new normal as well. It's gone pretty smoothly so far. Thanks to all the people that are in the room helping us out here. I think we're ready to get started. So, Heather, if you'd be so kind as to give us the first question, please.
How will ancillary services like speech, social work, OT, and PT work?
Okay, so the question deals with some of the ancillary services. So these are services beyond just a resource room or a TC kind of situation where students are getting some extra services that are outlined in their IEP. So remember, IEP is still fully in effect. It's going to look very similar to how it would look if we were in face-to-face. Students that have speech services or OT services will be meeting with their therapists virtually, much like we're doing right now. And we're going to be providing those services and having the students work on things as we meet with them rather than face-to-face in a virtual or in a distance learning model. All the times stay the same. If there's special equipment or things that we need to practice those skills, that's certainly something that therapist will be making sure that each individual family has those things so that they can work with their students on some of the things. I think this is really going to be an interesting time because our communication with families is going to be higher than ever. We know that when we work together, children learn more. And when we're in this kind of a situation, and I think parents are going to get to see what therapies and ancillary services look like better than ever, they're going to be better prepared to help us work as a team and have increased amounts of success with those goals and objectives because we've just strengthened the school to home partnership. It's a great question. How about the next one, Heather?
Next one is, how will student parapros assist them during their classes, both one-on-one and classroom parapros?
So the next question deals with our paraprofessionals. And let me just take a moment here to talk about the paraprofessionals that we have here in Wayne Westland. They are awesome people. They're some of the most dedicated educational professionals that I've ever met. I know that many times students themselves relate best and have the greatest relationships with the parapros that they work with. And I know that parapros many times have the most amount of pride when they're seeing students make gains because of the work that they do with them. So, if you get a chance, thank a parapro. And here's what I'll tell you. Parapros are going to be working with your children if they're part of the classroom or part of a one-on-one situation because they need them. It's going to be a virtual situation to start with. It's going to be something where each child that has those kinds of services is going to be receiving them in a Zoom or part of the Google Meet where the paraprofessional will join that classroom. Or the paraprofessional might at some point break off with a small group of students or maybe even an individual student to reteach, help maintain those skills, help that student practice in a way that we're looking at as our new normal in terms of a distance learning or a virtual type of a situation. Heather, another question, please.
How will students that have accommodations like tests being read, extra time, and all of those kinds of things work?
Heather's telling me that the next question deals with accommodations that are on those IEPs. And remember, we know all IEPs are fully in effect. So how's that going to be accomplished? Well, it's going to be accomplished by either a paraprofessional or maybe the teacher themselves working individually or with a small group of students to read that test, just like you would see in the normal classroom, but now we're doing it virtually. And so a small group of students may have that test read to them. Some other students might need a scribe, and so that would be where that student is telling a paraprofessional the essay answer that they have, and that paraprofessional is transcribing it so that we can get that information back and use that to assess where children are, what kind of learning needs to happen, what kind of reteaching, and where they are in terms of attaining their goals. But just know that those accommodations that are in place are going to happen virtually, and it's going to be something that each individual student will do likely a little bit different, and each individual classroom will have that done in a little bit of a different fashion.
When will we be able to see exactly what the school day schedule looks like, including their therapies?
So I know school day schedules have been something that they've put out, and I know individual schools are tweaking them from there about what each individual classroom will be. So those are something that you'll be seeing a lot more of soon. But let's talk specifically about special education. That's why we're here. So special education schedules will be something that each individual provider will be working with classroom staffs to build something for each individual child. So we're masters at this. I know that people are very, very good at that are in the special education department. It's something that we've always done when we've been in face-to-face, and now we've just got to transfer those skills into our distance learning opportunity that we have. So you're likely to see something that might have different looks to it. And if it doesn't work the first time, we're going to be flexible in making sure it works. I think one of the key elements here is to remember that we need to keep the student first and foremost in mind here. And I know my staff is aware of that as well. We need to be pulling students for these services at a time when we can maximize the educational benefit for them. We know that certain students have certain times where they're more productive and more open to therapies and those kinds of things. And we're going to be working with classrooms, fellow therapists, families, students themselves, so that there is an excellent opportunity to provide those services in such a way that they have maximum benefit to help students reach maximum potential for those services that we're providing to them. Another question, please.
Can parents determine start and schedule times for special ed students?
So we've got to be flexible here, and we've got to work together as a team. The question here deals with, can parents determine start and schedule times for things? We've got to be flexible, and we've got to all work together as a team. It's going to be part of what we do. Communication is going to be key here so that we have times work out that work for everybody. Just as I would never expect my staff to say, well, this is the time, and if you can't make the time, when we can't happen. I would also expect parents to be flexible as well in terms of looking at the schedule and making sure that it's a time that everybody can work with. We've got a whole week there to get everything in, and just as we would get everything in during a school week or a school day or a morning or session, I think we've got lots of opportunities there to make sure that we're all working together so that it's a time that's in the best interest of the child, and that we have something that'll work well for everybody. Sometimes we even need to be more flexible when we talk about groups, that we'll make sure that those groups are times that are mutually agreeable to all three of the participants in the group. Another question?
One of my son's goals is working on social cues and socialization. How will we handle that?
Okay, so the question is, and I'm trying to remember to repeat those questions, and I know sometimes I forget, so forgive me for that. Again, I'm asking for that grace and patience as we get used to all of the new things. So it talks about goals in terms of socialization, and how in the world are we going to do that in a virtual world? Well, we're probably talking about doing some of those things with small groups. So the therapist may be working with bringing 2 or 3 students in to work in a small group, and instead of that being a face-to-face around a kidney-shaped table, we might be doing that through a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, or the kinds of things that we're kind of calling our new normal. Again, taking a look at those data points and then figuring out from there if there are goals of concern that we would have to write a contingency learning plan to make sure that we had the things in place so that those students can not only attain but excel in those goals and objectives. Heather, another question for us, please.
We have many questions about the post-secondary transition program. Who will they report to? What will their schedules look like? And will they get access to technology as well?
Okay, so the post-secondary transition program is for those students that have completed their high school program but still need additional work before they're kind of finished with school. I always call it the next step program, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to build here for our Wayne Westland students so that they can be independent and productive citizens out in our community. So please allow me a moment to talk about how proud we are of that program. Moving forward, we have teachers in that program, and they will be working directly with the students that are in the post-secondary program. Much like you're going to see in our K-12 program, our post-secondary program will run very similar. They'll have access to all of the technology that everybody else does. The class will meet much the way it does. When we're talking about vocational kinds of things, no one will be going out to job sites at this point, just because, number one, remember those priorities in terms of being safe. That can't be something that we look at right now. But in terms of educational benefit for those students, we're going to be working a lot on the skills that students need to be able to attain a job and then to maintain that job. Some of these soft skills, or what we might call universal work skills, are going to be something that we have an opportunity to work on to make sure that those students have those things. But please know, we haven't forgotten about those students. Those students will have the technology, they have excellent teachers, and the services that are in their IEPs will be adhered to as well.
We have several questions asking about student behavior, students who are not wanting to do the Zoom learning and not participating at home. How will schools support parents when this is happening?
So the question deals with behavior. And what about when students are refusing to participate in Zoom calls or Google Meets or to complete things? How will we support parents? And I think that's an excellent question and a very good one. Here's the thing. We're going to have to work together to figure this out. Much like we do when we're in class and we're face-to-face and a student refuses to participate, the key is to bring everybody in, have a meeting about what might be driving this student's behavior, and then how we can work on reinforcers and positive things to get the student to reach their maximum potential. We know it's going to be a step-by-step process, and we know that this is going to go most smoothly when we work together. It's going to be key. It's key when we have face-to-face or when we're in regular school for this to be productive. It's got to be a home and school partnership. Here again, we're going to have that same thing and need that home and school partnership now more than ever. We've got excellent social workers and psychologists, resource room teachers, teacher consultants, ASD coaches. Those people are all going to be there to be kind of guides as we work together for what this will look like and best meet the needs of each student. And remember that we've got those contingency learning plans that we're going to be collecting data for. It will give us an opportunity to increase supports, create different supports, possibly look at different accommodations and modifications that are going to need to be done through either distance learning or some face-to-face that addresses specific goals and objectives.
My daughter was supposed to be tested for a learning disability. How and when will that happen now?
Okay, the question is about an evaluation for a student that may have a disability. And so what I will say here is the evaluations are going to move forward after those first 3 weeks when we're virtual. with terms of some testing and those kinds of items. If there are things that can be done virtually in terms of starting those evaluations, I'm going to have our psychologists, social workers, and other special education providers begin those processes right at the beginning of school. It's important that if we do suspect a disability, my staff has been directed to give the services needed to make that student successful. I know that we have evaluations from the end of last year that need to be completed, and I know that more evaluations will come in as we continue to identify students with individual needs, and know that those needs are going to be addressed, and that we are going to move to get evaluations done just as quickly as possible. We're not in the same place that we were, remember, in the spring. Remember, in the spring, we were at a stay home, stay safe. We're at a different place in terms of evaluations now, where we may be able to look at some face-to-face testing happening so that we can get those evaluations done. And also remember that we're going to do this in the safest way possible. We're going to give educational benefit to students, and if we suspect that there's a disability, we're going to move forward as if this disability has already been identified, and we're going to stay compliant with all of the guidelines that are out there that give us direction in terms of the rules and regulations for special education.
Many of us are working parents. I won't be home to monitor my child's every move. How do we work around this, and are there any other services or programs being provided for kids with working parents?
So when we're talking about working parents, and the question here is, we're working parents, we both work, how can we look at those kinds of situations? I know as a parent and as a former principal, the Champions program is out there and accepting students in terms of bringing kids in that need those kinds of services. So that's an avenue for parents, and I know that my wife and I were certainly well pleased with how well our daughters did in the Champions program. Beyond that, I think it's a conversation that you have with your case manager and your service providers, so that when we're creating that schedule, we're doing so and being as flexible as we can be, so that we have opportunities to work with your student when you're there, and we can have those opportunities for learning be something that we can work on together. If you have individual questions about your student, I would ask that you reach out to those individual supervisors and have conversations with them about accommodations that you might need in terms of working parent schedules. Other questions?
If children need to be in face-to-face, will there be bus transportation available for those select students?
Yes. The question is about bus transportation, and it has to do with if we are in a face-to-face, or we identify a goal through a contingency learning plan where we're now in a situation where we've got to go to a face-to-face or an in-person learning situation. The question is about transportation, and absolutely we have the obligation to transport your sons and daughters in the safe way to and from school, so that we can work with them in that way, and then make sure that they get home safely in return. So yeah, that's absolutely, it's part of your IEP, and remember, all IEPs are fully implemented at this point.
Could you talk for a minute about the difference between how Edgenuity IEP students will be versus remote learning students in the classroom?
Excellent question.
Virtual.
So we've got two different programs here that we're kind of discussing, and the question deals here with what's the difference between Edgenuity and the Wayne Westland distance learning program, because we know that they're different, but in terms of special education and in terms of IEPs, what does that look like? So please know that any student that's part of either of these programs, the IEPs are in full effect. Edgenuity does provide some special education services to our students through the programs that they do. Modifications, accommodations, and some of those things are just part of the program that happens with Edgenuity. On the other hand, when we're looking at the Wayne Westland program, that's going to be Wayne Westland teachers, and it's also going to be Wayne Westland special education providers. If your son or daughter has been in the program for a few years and they've remained at the same school, the faces that you'll see on the computer providing those services will be very familiar faces. On the other hand, some of those faces might not be the same in an Ingenuity kind of situation, because that might be the Ingenuity people providing those services as well. If there are services beyond what we could be looking at a contingency learning plan for them as well, to address what that student needs in order to be successful in that virtual learning platform. Excellent question. I'm glad that was asked.
If in-person schooling starts in October, will special ed parents have the option of continuing virtual learning?
So this question deals about the hypothetical situation that if in school, I'm assuming they're talking about full face-to-face starts in October, what kind of options are there for special education students? And what I would say is, remember those three priorities in terms of safety, educational benefit, and compliance. And then we've got to work through what that would look like for each individual student in terms of the options that we would have based on those three things, based on the data that we're collecting. We would build an individual program for students that reflected all of our priorities, as well as making sure that they're making progress towards their goals and things. It's going to be a unique thing. I certainly would like that if we were able to get to that in October. I think that'd be great. But know that as we begin to collect data and as we move forward in this process, it's going to be a step-by-step thing. And I wouldn't certainly want to predict what that would look like. But I would tell you this, that we would want to move through that step-by-step, keeping those three priorities in mind. Heather, do we have another one of those excellent questions?
I have looked at the class schedules, and I'm wondering how Wednesday's time will be used to provide instruction and services to students.
So Wednesdays, I know, is the day that our staff will be working on professional development. They'll be doing some planning. They'll be having those kinds of opportunities on those Wednesdays. I also know that some of our special education staff are going to use that time to provide some special education services to be able to work that into the schedule. Now, that's not to say that Wednesday is going to be, service provider day, and it's going to look like all of those services are only going to happen on Wednesdays, because that's simply not true. But you may see some services provided on Wednesdays if we're working on that schedule, and that's what works out well for the provider, for the family, and for the child. It's going to be individualized, and it's important to remember that it's going to be something that we work on together. Again, that home to school contract or working together is going to be critical in making sure that we have the very best things in place for the students that require extra special help here in Wayne Westland.
Some students don't even have internet access or computers. How will the school district address the needs of special education children that need access to technology? So
this is something I'm glad has come up. The question is about technology, and what about students that don't have technology or even Wi-Fi services? I'm extremely proud to report that this team, the administrative team, technology administration, has worked extremely diligently to make sure that we are going to have technology for all of the students in Wayne Westland, and that they are going to have those things needed to be able to participate in a distance learning program. There was a special board meeting last night where they moved forward with lots of orders for more technology. I've heard our new superintendent talking about making sure that Wi-Fi is going to happen in even our most remote corners of the district, so that students are going to be able to get online. They're going to be able to accomplish these assignments. They're going to be able to see and talk with their teachers, and they're going to have the very best opportunities to be able to live in our new normal and work in this different way of distance learning. So absolutely, everybody's going to have that. In terms of those technologies, sometimes the next question is, well, how is technology going to be passed out? The technology is going to come out through individual school buildings. So if your child is a student at Roosevelt McGrath or Stevenson or John Glenn High School or Wayne High or Tinkham, those devices are going to be passed out through those individual schools. You should be looking for an email or some more information coming out from your principal, and they're going to talk about what that technology distribution plan is. And at that time, those devices are going to come out to students, and then we're going to have an opportunity where your student's going to be able to see the face of their teacher or service provider as we talk back and forth, much as we're doing right now. It's going to be different for some kids. It's going to be comfortable for others, and it's going to be exciting, I think, for everybody. So again, a huge point of pride for our community that we've moved as far and as fast as we have, making sure that technology is part of our new normal for all of our kids. Another question, Heather?
How will IEP meetings occur or take place?
The question here is about IEP meetings and how will they occur or take place. What I will tell you here is IEP meetings are going to be done in a variety of different ways. Wednesday might be an excellent opportunity to bring some of those IEP meetings, and I'll even extend it out that some of those continuity learning plans, those CLP meetings, may also have here. It's going to be up to the team to talk about what that looks like. Again, we're in a different place than we were in the spring. We could be looking at having some of those meetings with appropriate social distancing, with safety in mind, in a face-to-face kind of situation. We could also be looking at having some of those meetings, much like we're having this meeting tonight, with a virtual flair to it so that we all can get together at that time and talk about the child. Here's the thing, if I've learned anything in the last few months, I know that flexibility will be king here, and that we will have to work possibly that it'll be a combination of things. It's going to be individual, and what I'll continue to hammer on here is that safety has to be our number one concern moving forward, so that people are feeling comfortable and the meetings that we have are providing a safe environment where everybody's comfortable and can work tirelessly on the plan that's put in place to ensure that student success. Another question?
Can a parent support group be considered to help us parents navigate this new way of learning, possibly to share ideas and motivating children, brainstorm issues, keep kids on task, ideas for working parents, and etc.?
It was a longer question, but let me try to summarize it a little bit for you in saying that can we start to bring together some parent groups? And I think that this topic has come up at all three sessions that we've done today, and so it's absolutely something that we can help facilitate here. We have a gem right here in our community, and it's the Arc of Western Wayne County. I'll be contacting Cheryl Polite tomorrow to work with her about possibilities of working together to be able to get some resources for our parents in looking at bringing these groups together, having their educational liaisons and parent liaisons that work for the Arc of Western Wayne County help facilitate this work for us so that parents don't feel like they're on an island. Parents don't feel like there's no support out there. We've got excellent case managers and service providers that we can lean on for some of those ideas, but the Arc of Western Wayne County, when we partner with them and work with them, will also be able to bring us a parent's perspective. And I think that that will be a very large resource. So look for further information as I continue to work with them, and maybe even working with our old Special Angels group or our CPAC group to make sure that we have resources for parents and know that you're reaching out and we want to help you with that so that we're all working on this together. Excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up again.
Will there be training courses on how to use the technology for both parents and students? We struggled in the spring and we're still not sure.
So we know that this question is a good one. It's dealing with what happens when we need some additional training in terms of technology and those things. So I know that the technology department here in Wayne Westland is working on short videos that you can watch when you need them, and also having help desks and things like that so that parents can reach out and figure out why the Zoom doesn't have any sound, or figure out why we're having trouble connecting, or why my battery's only lasting 35 minutes, and how I get the camera to work. These are all real things, and as we navigate through our, keep calling it our new normal, as we keep navigating that, it's things that we're learning how to do, but we need help sometimes. And so we're fortunate here to have a technology department that's going to create those videos so that you know how to solve some of these common problems, and that you have a person to contact, so that when all else fails, when the videos didn't work, there's a voice on the other end of that line that can talk you through the process of getting things to work, and helping you out, so that we all have that, and we all can get online and do things that we need to do to be able to help our students. Another question, Heather?
Several regarding other options that might be available for students that do not benefit from virtual learning or need more hands-on tasks.
So my understanding is there's been several questions about options for students that need more hands-on, that find virtual learning difficult, that find distance learning and on computers difficult. Remember, this is a learning process, and as we go along, certainly where we are in the beginning won't be where we are in the end, that we're going to learn and grow as we go through here. Students will not be experts in how to navigate an online or a distance learning system, and it's going to be critical that we learn and grow together with this. You know, our teachers are awesome, and they're going to be breaking down lessons so that they have the full realization, and that the kids are aware that little bits and pieces with frequent breaks are going to be just critical here in making sure that we keep students engaged. Student engagement now, after we've been out of school for an entire summer, and can even extend that when you take a look at COVID, aren't where we will expect people to be in the end. So in terms of options of those things, those are going to be considerations that you're working with your individual case managers and teachers to talk about what students' needs. We're collecting that data. The contingency learning plans will be something that we'll all be working towards to make sure that those needs are being addressed. And know that, you know, if we do have needs for certain goals and objectives, that we will be looking at face-to-face and other options, keeping those three things I keep harping on in mind: the safety, educational benefit, and those compliance issues. Another question? We seem to be running towards the bottom of our questions, so if you do have one, don't forget, put it in the chat room. If we missed yours, please don't be insulted. We won't be insulted either. Ask it again, put it in there, so that we have an opportunity to bring that back around and have a conversation with it. I'm giving you a couple moments about that, a couple reminders. Remember, those technology distribution plans are based on schools. So you're going to need to be looking for that principal to be emailing you with the information about what that plan looks like for pickup of your son or daughter's devices. Also, I'm going to encourage people, again, reach out to those case managers and supervisors if there are things that you are frustrated about. We're here for you. We want to work together, and I think that it's critically important at this time, when we've got an opportunity to work together, that we do so, because we know when we work together, things are far more productive for our children in terms of the therapies and educational experience that we're able to extend to children. Heather, is there one more question?
Yes. How will special education services work with students who are at the Career Technical Center under the new distance learning model?
So here's another excellent question, our last one for the evening tonight, and it deals with our Career Technical Center and how will students be receiving services if they're part of that program as well. This is very individualized, because when you look at the different programs that are at our Career Tech, we know that they range everywhere from automotive mechanic all the way up to Cheftonian is wonderful foods program that he has there, culinary, excuse me, not foods. Know that the services that you would see as part of their normal day for teacher consultant and things, the accommodations and modifications that are in those students' IEPs, still fully in effect, still something that we'll continue to work on. Those teaching assistants and things that we're always providing supports to kids will still be there. We also have the availability of the paraprofessionals to be able to continue to give those supports as well. So in that, you know, it's important to realize that anything that we had when we're in face-to-face will be the same things that we'll be able to do to provide. It'll just look a little bit different. In closing, and I kind of want to bring it to draw it to a close here as our time is winding down, with a question that happened in our 10 o'clock presentation. And the final question there, I think, was just a critical one, and I want to bring it up here as well. The parent asked, what can I do to ensure that this works well for my student? What's one critical thing that we could do to make sure that this goes well? How do we do that? What should we do? I thought this was just such a good question. And what I would say is be positive. Get excited that the start of school is happening. Get your kid pumped up that this is going on. Your sons and daughters, you're going back to school. This is what it's going to look like. You're going to have technology. You're going to be able to see your teacher. You're going to be able to see your classmates. Really play it up. And when you're frustrated, that's a time to walk away. Continue to be positive about the things that they're going to be doing and that they're going to be experiencing, so that the kids know that this is a positive thing. Remember, one day we're going to be back in face-to-face. What day that is, I don't know, but as we build on that transition, the more positive we are about what's happening right now and what students are experiencing, the better off our kids are going to be and the more positive they're going to be. They learn from us, and if we're positive, they're going to be positive. And if we're eager to have them participate, they're going to be more eager to participate as well. Remember, positive reinforcement is going to be critical here as well. Often praise. When they're getting online, when they're doing the things that they need to do, and when they're doing their homework and participating in Zooms, high fives and hugs are going to be critical in terms of the positive thing here. Stay positive. We can do this. It's going to be a great thing. Again, I thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope that you found this information helpful. If there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate. Reach out to us. We're in this together, and we can do this. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.